Meghan Markle is once again on the attack, and in her sights is Valentine Lowe, the journalist who broke the bullying allegations story. And he recently did an interview with Kenzie Schofield where he elaborated a bit more about how the former staff of Meghan Markle still continue to have bad recollections of their time with her, live in fear of her, and are still experiencing a level of PTSD. And Meghan, of course, went way overboard trying to combat this narrative. Of course, Meghan's problem is that her greatest problem is Meghan Markle. And she is exaggerating to such an extreme, it reaches a point of absurdity. But it's sort of interesting to, I think, analyze Meghan's rebuttal here because she is revealing so much about herself and how she's trying to utilize her PR team to attempt to salvage the reputation she herself destroyed. So we are going to get into this today, but if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, my name is Brittany. I do provide compelling royal commentary, so please hit that subscribe button. I would absolutely love to have you back. And I did want to share with you guys Ana Lucia Diamonds, who are a valued sponsor of this channel. And I'm wearing today my twisted gold hoop earrings, which are absolutely amazing. I also have my gold chain necklace here. We are going with a gold theme today because I think the buttons are gold. Yes, they are on my shirt. And then I also have this gorgeous ring. I changed out my usual stack for this behemoth right here, which sparkles beautifully in the sunlight, in the studio lights. So guys, if you're interested in Ana Lucia and you use code ROYAL20 on their website, you do save 20% and help support all that we do here at Royal News Network. And so when it comes to royal news, things are generally pretty slow right now. Most royal families sort of take August off. So there's not a lot happening, but we do have a report that Crown Prince Haakon of Norway traveled Portugal with his stepson, Marius Borg-Holmby. Marius is facing 23 charges in Norway right now on a variety of issues, some of them very extreme. And so it's kind of odd that they're doing this. And we should know this month what charges the prosecutors are going to pursue. So that's just kind of interesting. I'm surprised they're going out. It looks like his younger son is there too. And it just begs a lot of questions. I'm going to do a whole exploration of this issue with Norway. It might be part of what becomes a larger series, but we need to go over the whole Marius case, everything. And so that'll be a long form. It might be more of, let's say, audio instead of video. I'm still deciding what we're going to do with it. But this is a huge, massive case that Marius is facing. And the Norwegian royals just don't seem to be taking it that seriously. So it'll be interesting to see what the family does. But yeah, Marius is in a pickle. And as a result, especially of the royal family's continued seemingly indulgence of Marius, is not looking too good for them either. But let's get into this Meghan Markle story, because this is one, when I saw this rebuttal from Meghan, I was like, oh my gosh, like going after Valentine Lowe. I've actually interviewed Valentine Lowe. I'll stick the interview up here. I think this was in 2023. And he's a very even-keeled journalist. He is not a journalist that has a strong bias. He really does try to see everything from all sides. I feel like he is very measured in his responses. And so to attack him and to attack his character and credibility is quite outlandish, because Valentine at this point is pretty impeccable. His reporting is impeccable. His character, as far as I can tell, when it comes to being a journalist, is pretty impeccable here. The problem is Meghan. But immediately she's going on the attack here. And I feel like this is almost more extreme than what we've seen somewhat recently. And I think it goes back to this idea that Meghan is sort of freaking out about their future. Things are unsure with Netflix. Netflix can air her show or not air her show. It's totally up to them. She already made it with them. They're going to do it, but they've already kind of killed any momentum it had. She has no podcast deal as far as we're aware. At least she's abandoned Confessions of a Female Founder. She had a couple of friends, like a handful, give her birthday shout outs, but we didn't get one from Oprah, Serena Williams. Serena Williams on Meghan's birthday watched Happy Gilmore. She didn't really chat to Meghan. And I'm sure Meghan was endlessly scouring her friends' accounts to see if they would post publicly about her, because I'm sure she was clamoring for that. And she responded to them too which I thought was kind of weird because it's like you won't follow your friends, but you'll interact with them and tell them, "Oh, thank you so much for loving me," basically. Because that's what Meghan wants. Meghan wants us to love her as much as she loves and also loathes herself. Meghan has this self loathing in addition to a narcissistic self love. And when it comes to her public persona, what I see it, and this is increasingly my analogy, so you'll have to forgive me, which is that Meghan Markle wants us all to be in the insane asylum with her, basically, endlessly clapping and wondering at the glory that is the mediocrity of Meghan Markle. We should all just be endlessly clapping and cheering along because she, in her sainthood, is the combination of Albert Einstein, Mother Teresa, and Princess Diana. Somehow she is glamorous, wildly intelligent, and also completely and utterly charitable, even though she doesn't really share all those things. Even though that isn't really her character. She's shallow, vain, and vapid. And she, I think, is desperate to try to steer the narrative towards her delusions, and she wants us all to follow. And I think Meghan's immense frustration is that we won't go along with it. And by me, and by we, I mean the general public. We figured her out. We didn't believe the persona after a while. For me, it was almost immediately. For everybody else, it took, let's say, the engagement interview, the wedding, how she treated her father, all the secrecy, regarding Archie. Then you had Oprah, then you had Netflix, then you had Spare. Like everybody has their trigger points where they kind of went, you know what? I just don't believe this person that is Meghan Markle. I think she's fake. I think she's artificial. I think she's lying. And Meghan desperately wants us all to believe her caricature. And what I mean by that is the fake persona Meghan has created for herself in her own mind, her delusional self. She wants us all to believe it. And her problem is that we don't. And in order to sort of push back against that, she goes on the attack. And this time it's against somebody who has a lot more credibility than Meghan does. And she just goes to such an extreme. You realize how threatened she is. She's immensely threatened by Valentine Lowe and what he reported. She's still terrified, I think, in some ways, of her real self getting out there because number one, she can't face it. But number two, she doesn't want the truth out there. Yet she claims to be truthful. It's wildly entertaining how delusional she is. So let's look at her response. So this is sort of an analysis of sort of what Valentine Lowe shared with Kenzie. So it says Markle's spokesperson told the Post that Lowe is blasting harmful gossip and continues to desperately recycle false, offensive, and long discredited allegations in an apparent bid to sell books and resuscitate relevance. Okay, number one, Valentine Lowe does not need to resuscitate relevance. He doesn't care. He doesn't care in that way Meghan does. So this is more relevant to Meghan, but it's also this kind of attack here is what you call an ad hominem. They're not attacking the argument really. They're attacking him personally. He wants to sell books, which is kind of not what he's doing here. He's also does have a book that's coming up for sale next month, but it's not on sale right now. And so he's not really necessarily trying to sell books and resuscitate relevance. Well, if he doesn't care, then the relevance issue is not really there. What he's doing is reporting on things that he initially revealed in 2021 and can still continues to affect people to this day. And the second, you could say, logical fallacy here is this statement. It's a straw man statement, which means it's like it doesn't really have any credibility. It's misrepresenting an opponent's argument to make it easier to attack. And it says here, continues to desperately recycle false, offensive, and long discredited allegations. Okay, they're not discredited, though. They're not discredited at all. In fact, we have a series at this point of reports that show that Meghan Markle is the boss from hell, allegedly. I only have to say allegedly for legal reasons. I think that's true, but you got to be careful with your wording, which is why most people say alleged bullying. It's just for legal reasons. Anyways, I think she's the boss from hell. And she has not been able to disprove that at this point. She had one desperately gathered together article for Us Weekly where she had some of her staff members go on record and tell us how wonderful and amazing she is. But honestly, it made her seem more unhinged. I mean, you get even the impression now anymore that this is becoming more and more crazy, unhinged behavior from Meghan. As things get worse behind the scenes, she's getting more unhinged publicly. And when it comes to what she said in like the Us Weekly piece, which I thought was really weird, and you could twist different ways. So, what her staff members were doing, the ones that had to go on record, because I'm sure she was like, go on record, tell them how wonderful and amazing I am. If you don't, I'll fire you or make things really difficult for you. One of the staff members said that Meghan would call every day after surgery to see how this woman was recovering, and her husband usually took the calls. And so I'm like, if your husband usually took the calls, is he taking the calls because you can't or because you don't want to, because your boss is there going, being kind of sweet, going, oh, I hope you're feeling better. When are you going to be back to work? I need you back to work right now. I think that's more likely the case. It didn't alleviate any of the concerns. And the Us Weekly piece was a reaction to the Hollywood Reporter piece, which called Meghan Markle a dictator in heels and that she cannot make a good decision to save her life, which we've seen again. Vanity Fair kind of reiterated that. We've had so many reports. We even have Tom Bauer's book, well-researched reports that say the same thing over and over and over again. So they're not recycling false, offensive, and long discredited allegations. They're real. That's why she hates them. They're real and they're scary. And we don't, again, believe in the delusions she does. I come to that realization because Meghan, I think, she has this delusional persona of herself, and it just drives her crazy that people just don't believe it like she does, like maybe some of her friends do, and like Harry does or used to. I'm sure he's seen the real Meghan Markle plenty of times by now, and he doesn't totally buy it either. And it's not harmful gossip. And the reason we know this is because Meghan has never sued Valentine Lowe. She could have. She didn't. And she didn't because she had to know that she would lose that lawsuit. She apparently, through her lawyers, released a long letter and then released a short one. And they were very, of course, virulent of, oh, Meghan, she's such a saint. Of course she wouldn't do X, Y, and Z. But if it's harmful gossip, meaning that you can disprove everything basically because it was maliciously created, like that's a defamation suit, basically. And so she could have gone with that, but she didn't. And she didn't because she didn't have a route to. She didn't have a possibility of it. And so she let it go. She had to let it go. She had no other options. And so this harmful gossip, I mean, this whole statement is ridiculous, but it's an attack on Valentine Lowe's character because she can't stand on her own. She has to attack him in order to try and protect herself. And here's where she tries to spin the Saint Meghan narrative. She goes, these claims, I mean, her rep does, but this is probably from Meghan, rooted in anonymous and unverified sources. Okay, number one, this is so wrong because they're anonymous because it literally might result in charges for some people who were within the royal sphere to go on the record about them. That's sort of how the Secrets Act works. At least that's how sort of Dan Wooten shared it with me one time, is that some of these people are literally kept to and could face prosecution if they went on the record on certain things. Also, as well, it's anonymous to protect the people reporting and Meghan Markle. Like the palace has gone out of its way in some ways to protect her, but they're actually protecting themselves because Meghan Markle's alleged horrific behavior is bad for the monarchy too, because they didn't protect their staff. That's a thing. They did not protect them. And so because of that, they had to keep everything that was in the bullying allegations report quiet as well because it looked bad for them. It looked bad on Meghan. And so everybody kept their silence. But in a way as well, it was there to protect the staff. Because if Meghan knew who made what allegations or whatever, we know she would be an attack dog. She has an endless reservoir of vengeance in her heart, is how kind of Valentine Lowe said it. I mean, poor Harry, dude. If he decides to leave her, oh my gosh, will he never, ever hear the end of it? She will be horrifically awful to him for the rest of his life. This is why you have to be careful about who you choose to marry. Maybe when your family members were saying, I'm not so sure, maybe, Harry, they were trying to help you. And so the statement goes on to say, form part of a broader and deeply troubling agenda that seeks to dehumanize a woman who has consistently stood up for fairness, dignity, and truth. Lies, lies, and lies. Meghan Markle is the person responsible for her own terrible press. It's not a campaign. She's just kind of a terrible person, in my opinion. And when you're a terrible person, yeah, that comes to light a lot of the time. People aren't willing to protect you. In fact, they enjoy revealing you to the world because you treated them horribly. That's sort of the reality here. And this idea, this joke that she has ever stood up for fairness, dignity, and truth. What about Oprah Winfrey, Meghan Markle? When you lied, bald-faced lied, basically to Oprah, telling her that Archie wasn't going to get a title because of the color of his skin. Lie. That was a lie. And you admitted it later in the interview. Winfrey never called you on it because the only journalists you like, the only journalists that Meghan Markle can stand are the ones that just endlessly indulge her, that just go along with whatever she says. Those are the only journalists, quote unquote, that she can stand. Journalists that actually question her is what she doesn't like. She doesn't stand for fairness, dignity, and truth. Otherwise, she wouldn't have lied and called her family, her in-laws, racist, basically, and drug them through the mud for her own pleasure. That's Meghan Markle. She enjoys trying to destroy people, I think, to lift herself up. This woman does not stand for fairness, dignity, and truth. She does not stand for any of those things. Those are the antithesis of Meghan Markle. She's not fair. She's not dignified. She is not truthful. We have seen this play out endlessly. So to say this, I just find it immensely frustrating in some ways because her PR team should know better. This makes her sound dumb. It makes her sound crazy because we're all sitting over here going, we've watched her the last 8 years. Nobody's fooled by this except for her fans. Like, what does it benefit you to continue the lie at this point? It doesn't benefit you. Like, better off to just say the truth. And I have an example of something that I think is actually really a good way for Meghan to have gone and that she refused to. You can't say you stand for fairness, dignity, and truth when you allegedly bully your employees, you're a terrible boss, and you lied about your family. You can't do that. You cannot do that. And Meghan just does not seem to get that. She doesn't seem to accept that we are not interested in indulging her delusional fantasies. We're not going to all be in the insane asylum with her. I mean, it gets to the point where she's almost such a propagandist that she would really do well probably in North Korea if she could like fully run it without anybody ever questioning anything she does. I mean, she could get chummy with Kim Jong-un and just be there and just have the endless praise and accolades she always wants. But reality is, when you're not a good person, oftentimes it does come back to bite you in the butt. It just does. Her actions have consequences, and she just can't accept that. She's like a child. Okay, so it goes on to say the Duchess has faced years of unfounded attacks masked as journalism. No, she hasn't. The reason that the attacks hurt her is because they're truthful. They're truthful. They're based on truth. They're based on numerous reports. Again, we have building and building and building. Like, you could maybe say this in 2021. You can't say this now. This just looks dumb from her PR team, to be quite honest. And in a never-ending smear campaign, she smeared herself. She mocked the queen. She lied on Oprah. She smeared herself. Like, I didn't do any of that to her. She did it to herself. If she could just tell the truth instead of having this perpetual need to drive a narrative, she'd be fine. This is not hard. Beginning only once she affiliated with the institution. Okay, this is why. And this, I think, reveals so much that Meghan just doesn't seem to understand. Her ridiculous, I think, narrative that she concocted for herself as a bit player on Suits worked at the time because she was a D-list actress and no one gave a crap about what she was saying. They believed her, or they just didn't care enough to question. She was inconsequential. They didn't care. And so when you're an inconsequential person, you can probably say whatever you want and everybody's like, yeah, whatever. They didn't care enough. Once you enter into the monarchy and taxpayer money is involved, there is a level of transparency that is required. You don't get to say whatever you want anymore and have us all believe it. People trust, maybe at first, and verify. And then later, because you're not truthful, they distrust and then they dig even harder. That's what happens. That is what happened to Meghan Markle. Once you enter into the monarchy, millions are spent on your wedding, taxpayer money. This was mostly for security, not necessarily for the wedding itself. And then millions was spent to rehab your home because you were going to be a working royal. Millions were spent on your clothing, on your travel, all these sorts of things. You are not going to get away with the same D-list tactics that you did years ago. When you wear a $100,000 Dior dress, yes, people are going to question you about it. Why? Because Taxpayer money was involved in that trip. You are representing the British monarchy. You're not just representing yourself and your own ambitions, you're representing something greater. And that should be an immense honor. But she hated it because she couldn't, it wasn't all about her. She hates anytime something's not all about her. And so, yeah, if you can't stand the heat, you have to get out of the kitchen. And that's what she's attempted to do. But the scrutiny that started is not going to end. If she didn't want the scrutiny, date the guy, dump the guy, and then move on. That was the only way she could play it. Because, yeah, celebrity journalism is not the bastion of journalism. They're just going to go with whatever. They don't really care. The British press, unfortunately for Meghan Markle, they're actually decent journalists. And they didn't buy everything she was selling. That's the thing. And they saw behavior. The reporters reported your terrible behavior because they saw it. They saw the security guard cry after the fiasco of the market visit in Fiji. They saw her crying in her car. And I can't remember who it was. I think it was Rebecca English said she locked eyes with her and they both knew. They both knew. And they figured out really quickly. Meghan just made everybody's lives difficult. And she should not be a surprise that she doesn't seem to understand that actions have consequences. Makes me question her intelligence and her maturity immensely. Because, yeah, actions have consequences. You can't just go through life as if nothing ever matters but yourself and expect the world to bow at your feet and you not to have any issues ever. You're going to have issues. There's a great quote, experience is the most brutal of teachers, but you learn, my God, you learn. Now, that's been attributed to C.S. Lewis. When I researched it, it was not, but that's so true. Meghan has an infinite level of experience, but she has not learned diddly squat from any of it. This is why she will always fail. She can't learn, and this learning should be obvious. And then Meghan claims she is undeterred by the noise and is firmly focused on her family and her work. Then why are you responding at all? If it's just noise, then ignore it. She's responding because she can't stand it. And things are falling apart behind the scenes. And the thing is, Hollywood knows she's a piece of work too. And this is why she's losing work. This is why she only had a small cadre of people who would publicly wish her a happy birthday. Jessica Alba didn't do it. Kerry Washington didn't do it. Her alleged, peripheral friends, because they don't want to be associated with her. She is toxic and she's created that for herself. And the best thing she could do to actually alleviate some of that is, I think, do what Michael Tate did recently. So if you're not familiar with Michael Tate, he was a part of a Christian rock group and he was alleged to have done inappropriate things and grooming young men in particular. They were all legal age, but he supplied them with alcohol, drugs, etc. And in addition to those sorts of things, obviously in certain Christian circles, living a gay lifestyle is not something that people approve of. And so he was claiming not to do that and yet doing that on the side. But he had an apology after the allegations came out. And regardless of whether or not he meant it, this statement actually, I think, gives him the best chance of recovery in terms of his public persona one day. And it's this line right here, which I can't really highlight. This is on Instagram, but I will read it to you. And it's starting right here. It says, while I might dispute certain details in the accusations against me, I do not dispute the substance of them. That is actually a line Meghan Markle should use. It's a line she should use. I cannot agree with everything that's said. I understand that. People have different interpretations of things, but I acknowledge the substance of them. If Meghan had done that when the bullying allegations first came out, she'd be in such a better place now. That she is not acknowledging that, to me, it's just crazy pants at this point. Just acknowledge you did something wrong. You know how people recover oftentimes in their public persona? They acknowledge fault. They say, I'm sorry. She's never said, I'm sorry. And I don't think she will ever succeed without acknowledging her faults, her flaws, her failures. She just kind of blazes through it as if nothing has ever hit her. When in fact, just by those statements against Valentine Lowe, she reveals how much all of it is cutting. And I thought it would be interesting as well to compare Harry's recent remarks regarding Andrew Lowe's book, who I will be talking to on Saturday. And so it says, Harry, against the stories in the Daily Mail, has said there are such are the gross inaccuracies, damaging, and defamatory remarks made in the Daily Mail story. I can confirm a legal letter from Harry's counsel has been sent to the Mail. Well, why not go after the actual person who wrote the book? And everything to them is defamatory. Everything is damaging. But I actually think this response here is a little bit better. This again is a Meghan Markle over exaggeration. She overly exaggerates all the time. She exaggerates to the point of absurdity, which undermines her credibility. But in the statement from Harry, it says, I can confirm Prince Harry and Prince Andrew never had a physical fight. Doesn't mean they didn't have a verbal one, though. That's actually kind of smart. Nor did Prince Andrew ever make the comments he is alleged to have made about the Duchess of Sussex to Prince Harry. Now, that's a pretty firm denial, but it's not overly verbose like Meghan's. He's just saying, no, none of this is true. Do I believe him? I don't know. Because again, Harry and Meghan have really crappy credibility. They really, really do at this point. But Meghan going after Valentine Lowe, once again, I feel like the wounds from the bullying allegations cut her deeply. She is still reeling from that. She can't handle it. And so she lashes out and goes on the attack rather than doing, I think, the smart approach by Michael Tate. Maybe you know him, maybe you don't know him. Either way, I think his response going, I can't say that everything that has been alleged is true, but I acknowledge the substance of the allegations, basically saying, yeah, I did some of these things, some of the situations I don't agree with. And Meghan, I think, would do herself so many favors by simply acknowledging her horrible behavior at times and making an effort to change. But instead, she constantly doubles down. She blames other people when the only person Meghan Markle has ever had to blame for any of the reputational damage she has had is Meghan Markle. Meghan is the sole source of her cratering public persona, her failing brands, everything. It's Meghan. All she had to do was change up her behavior. And yet we've seen endlessly that she just can't seem to do it. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Let me know what you think of the New York Post piece and the little analysis I had. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall speak to you again very soon. Bye.